Hi there. I'm honestly grateful you're here, watching this unfold. And if you choose to subscribe, well, that would mean a lot. Anyway, let's dive in. I should have known something was off the second I heard her laugh slice through the air. It wasn't natural. Too precise. The kind of laugh you give when you're forcing it, when the sound doesn't match the moment. We were in our backyard. Paper plates scattered across the patio table, cheap plastic cups sweating under the glow of string lights. The smell of grilled burgers still clung to the heat of the Arizona evening. Friends, co-workers, the same neighbors who once called us perfect, stood around chatting, sipping, smiling. And then Jessica, my wife, my partner, the woman I thought I understood, dropped her words into the crowd like a grenade. Her tone was almost casual, like she was talking about the weather. Honestly, open marriages make sense. A little freedom, a little fun. We're all headed to the same finish line anyway, aren't we? For a moment, no one moved. The laughter that followed was nervous, scattered, people not sure whether to take her seriously. I prayed she was joking, but when she locked eyes with me, steady, deliberate, that prayer died. She meant every syllable. It wasn't an accident. It was a test. I forced a thin smile, holding the fragile moment together with shaking hands. I always thought commitment was the whole point, I said, carefully measured. She gave a half shrug, lips curling faintly. Sure, if you like ownership. The way she said it, cold, detached, sucked the air out of the patio. Conversation stuttered and died. The desert night pressed down, heavier, hotter. So what are we now? My voice barely held. Some experiment in boundaries? Jessica sipped her wine and smirked. Monogamy's just a construct. There's a moment when everything you know tilts, when every memory, every mortgage payment, every lazy Sunday morning suddenly feels fragile, like a wave wiping out a sandcastle you didn't realize could crumble. I saw that realization flicker across our friends' faces as they looked anywhere but at us. No one dared speak. So is this you asking? I muttered, or telling me it's already happening? Her face didn't change. It's a discussion. No, I said sharply. A discussion happens before you blow something up, not in front of half the neighborhood. My voice cracked despite every effort to keep it steady. Dramatic, she murmured, rolling her eyes. The word cut deeper than it should have. You know what's dramatic? I hissed. Building a life with someone only to find out they've rewritten the rules without telling you. That was the signal. The crowd broke apart, dispersing into the night like smoke. No one wanted front row seats to this wreckage. The ride home was suffocatingly silent. Empty desert stretched endlessly on both sides, headlights carving tunnels through black asphalt and cactus shadows. Jessica stared out the window like she was searching for answers in the stars. My hands ached on the steering wheel, her words looping in my head. Open marriage. Like we were some restless couple from a late-night documentary. Like love was disposable. Until that night, I would have sworn I was happy. My name's Nathan, 38, electrical engineer. The kind of guy who eats the same breakfast every morning, fixes neighbors' appliances just because I can. I used to think loyalty mattered. Jessica was the one person I trusted beyond anyone else. We weren't flashy, but we were solid, or so I believed. Now I was driving beside a stranger who didn't care if everything we'd built burned down, as long as she got to call the ashes freedom. And worse, she didn't even look sorry. The hum of the tires was the only sound between us. Party lights were long gone, traded for black skies and lonely highways. I wanted to demand answers, to beg for an explanation, but nothing came out. From the corner of my eye, I saw her posture, relaxed, poised, like she'd rehearsed this speech for weeks and finally delivered it. One leg crossed over the other, fingers drumming her phone. No apology, no guilt. I wanted to yell, to slam the brakes, to ask what happened to the woman I married, but instead, I just kept driving. Past shuttered gas stations and silent saguaros, the road stretching endlessly ahead, heavy with words unsaid. She was the one who finally broke the silence. I want more, she said. 3 flat words, businesslike. More what? I asked, not looking at her. Freedom, space, a sigh. I want to explore people options. I clenched my jaw. So marriage was prison and now you want parole? She didn't blink. I'm tired of pretending we're something we're not. Something we're not. The phrase lodged in my chest. Then what are we? I whispered. Jessica kept her gaze on the blur of desert passing by. Routine, predictable. A pause. I need more than this. I don't know what hurt worse, the words themselves or the casual way she said them, like she was explaining why she quit a gym membership. We didn't speak again. When we pulled into the driveway, our modest single story with faded blue shutters and the bougainvillea she begged me to plant, I sat there, engine humming, wondering if I even wanted to step inside. Jessica didn't wait. She grabbed her purse, opened the door, and walked in. No glance back, not even one. Inside, the smell of barbecue lingered, plates stacked by the sink, half-empty bottles still on the patio table, a quiet aftershock of what, hours ago, had felt like a normal Saturday night. Only now, nothing felt normal. Jessica didn't ask if I was okay, didn't check if I followed her in. She walked straight to the guest room, the one we kept for visitors, and shut the door. A soft click. Done. I stood in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock on the wall. Everything felt familiar yet wrong, like walking through a movie set after filming ended. We used to laugh in this room, argue about groceries, plan weekends. It felt alive back then. Now it felt hollow. I opened the fridge, closed it. Couldn't eat. Couldn't think. The silence pressed down on me, relentless. Somewhere down the hall, I heard the faint thud of her shoes hitting the floor. She used to hum while brushing her teeth. Tonight, nothing. I collapsed onto the couch, sinking into the cushions like they might swallow me whole. I should have shouted, demanded answers. But what was the point? Jessica had already told me everything. She didn't want to leave, not entirely. She wanted to stay close enough to keep the safety we'd built, while reaching for everything beyond it. And me? I guess my part was to plaster on a polite smile, nod at all the right times, and keep whatever I was really thinking locked behind my teeth. I sank back into the couch cushions, gaze fixed on the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, uneven circles. My head was spinning just as badly. Where had I taken the wrong turn? When had we started losing our grip? Or maybe the truth I didn't want to face was that we'd been unraveling in plain sight, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. I reached for the throw blanket draped carelessly over the armrest, pulling it over my shoulders without bothering to flip a single switch. The chill wasn't just in the air, it had settled inside me. That night, I didn't check on her. Didn't hover at the door to see if she was asleep or if she needed me. I didn't even say goodnight, because whatever we were before, we weren't that now. The silence filling the house wasn't empty. It was alive, breathing against my chest, heavy and watchful as I sat hunched at the kitchen table long after midnight. The refrigerator's dim light spilled across the tile, its door left half ajar from when I'd given up on finding something to eat. The whole house felt suspended, like it was holding a breath, waiting to see if I would finally break. Jessica was already asleep in the guest room. That detail landed in my gut like a brick. No hesitation on her part, no pause at the doorway, no lingering look back. She'd walked away like she'd been practicing it for months. My eyes drifted toward the cluttered fridge, faded snapshots of us grinning at the Grand Canyon, sunburnt and carefree, a 2-year-old Christmas card with ugly sweaters and picture-perfect smiles. Lies, maybe, or just relics from a life that no longer belonged to us. My hand found the drawer nearby and pulled out our wedding album. I hadn't opened it in years. The edges were frayed, but our names still gleamed faintly in silver. Nathan and Jessica. 10 years ago, we'd stood beneath twinkling fairy lights, surrounded by everyone we loved, vowing forever with trembling voices and sweaty palms. I turned the pages slowly. Jessica's face beamed in laughter beside her sister. Her eyes sparkled wide and warm. And there I was, rigid in my tux, pretending I was calm while my heart tried to hammer its way out of my chest. God, we were so young. Dreamers. Clueless about what forever would demand. My fingers traced a photo of us kissing under the archway. For a heartbeat, it felt like looking at strangers, familiar faces blurred by distance, like we'd once borrowed each other's souls but forgot to renew the lease. The ache inside me shifted then, less like an open wound, more like an echoing hollow. Not anger, not yet, just grief. Grief for something dissolving no matter how tightly I tried to hold on. I shut the album softly and set it aside. That chapter was closing, even if the ink hadn't fully dried. In the cabinet above the microwave sat a bottle of whiskey, oak-aged, overpriced, the one Jessica had surprised me with on our last anniversary. I poured a small measure into a chipped coffee mug. No ice. Just enough burn to warm my throat and dull the jagged edges in my chest. Outside, the wind scraped through the trees, shadows flickering across the windows. The house creaked as it settled. The same walls we'd painted together, the floor where we'd spilled wine, the couch where we'd once fallen asleep watching reruns. Everything looked the same, nothing felt the same. Eventually I stood, walked down the hallway, stopped outside the guest room. The door was open just enough to catch her silhouette curled under the blankets. Still, quiet, untouched. I waited, hoping for a sign, a shift, a sigh. Anything that said she still felt this. Nothing. I turned back toward the master bedroom, my bedroom now. Sliding into bed, I noticed the pillow beside me still held the faint shape of her head. I didn't reach for it. I just stared at the ceiling and whispered the truth I'd been dodging for weeks. It's over. And saying it out loud didn't break me. It steadied me. The next morning, I didn't so much wake as surface, like coming up for air after staying underwater too long. I moved on autopilot. Shower, clothes, coffee, but nothing had taste, no weight. Only the truth remained. It's over. Jessica was gone when I left. No note, no goodbye. Just silence humming where her voice used to be. By 9:30, I was parked outside a small law office tucked between a dry cleaner and a fading bakery in a worn-down Phoenix strip mall. No gleaming skyscrapers, no polished mahogany desks, just a cracked sidewalk and a tarnished brass plaque. Brent Holloway, attorney at law. Brent wasn't what I expected. Older, with a silver beard, weather-beaten skin, cowboy boots. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharper than any lawyer I'd met. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I'm guessing you're not here to talk about joint checking accounts?" A laugh slipped out of me despite everything. "Number, I think I'm ready to walk." He nodded slowly, folding his hands over his stomach. "That's not something a man says lightly." I didn't answer. Not yet. He didn't push, just studied me for a beat, then reached for a battered manila folder. "Most guys wait too long," Brent said evenly. "By the time they show up here, they've already lost half of what they built. Money, peace, respect. Want my advice?" "I'm listening," I said. He smirked. "Good. First rule, don't react. Plan. Move assets quietly. Close joint accounts. Make copies of every document you can get your hands on. Stay ahead before she even realizes you're in a race." Something shifted inside me, a flicker of control. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was drowning. Then Brent surprised me. "You know," he said, glancing toward the blinds, "my wife left me 20 years ago. Said she needed to find herself. Took the car, the savings, even the friends who bought into her little freedom speech." I raised an eyebrow. "You seem okay with it now?" He chuckled. "I wasn't. Not for a long time. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. But then I realized she did me a favor. Losing her forced me to find something better. A life that was mine, not built around her moods." Brent leaned forward, voice steady. "You're not broken, Nathan. You're waking up." The words clung to me long after I left his office, with a notepad full of steps, a stack of legal forms, and something I hadn't felt in weeks: power. For the first time since Jessica's open marriage bombshell, I wasn't just reacting. I had a plan. As I crossed the parking lot, I caught my reflection in the truck window. Same face, same shirt, but the eyes staring back weren't numb anymore. They were awake. That night, I smelled it before I even stepped inside. Her perfume, sweet, floral, deliberate. Jessica never wore it at home unless she wanted to send a message. I found her in front of the hallway mirror, carefully applying lipstick. Focused, calculated. The emerald dress clinging to her was new, cut perfectly where she knew it would turn heads. "Big night?" I asked, though I already knew. She didn't look at me, just smoothed the edge of her lip and said. I set my keys on the hook with a deliberate slowness, catching her reflection in the hallway mirror. Should I even bother asking? Jessica's eyes met mine over her shoulder, sharp and impossible to read. Something flickered there. Thrill? Spite? Hard to say. "I've got a date," she said as casually as if she were reporting the forecast. "Dinner somewhere downtown. Maybe drinks after. Maybe dancing." My jaw tightened, but I only nodded. "You want me to pretend that's news?" I muttered. She turned to face me fully, giving herself one last look in the mirror before slipping into her heels. That was the moment I stopped pretending. I almost laughed, almost screamed, but didn't. I stayed rooted to the floor, letting her words coat me like ash. No hesitation in her tone, no guilt. She wanted me to react, to beg, to fight. I wouldn't. "Have fun," I said flatly. "Text me if you lose your keys again." That made her pause, just briefly, long enough to wonder if I'd stop her. I didn't. She fastened her earrings, grabbed her purse, and moved toward the door. "You're not even curious?" she asked, hand on the knob. "No," I answered, gaze fixed on the floor. "I ran out of curiosity for things that don't matter." The words landed harder than I expected. She hesitated, just enough to feel it, then forced a laugh. "Wow. Really leaning into this whole detached thing, huh?" I shrugged. "You started it." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and silence consumed the house. Not empty silence, not anymore. This silence had weight, clarity. I wandered into the living room, spotted her jacket draped over a chair. I started to fold it out of habit, then stopped mid-motion, left it crumpled, let it sit like evidence. Instead, I poured a glass of water and stepped out to the patio, watching as the desert sky deepened into indigo. Coyotes howled somewhere in the distance. It suited the moment perfectly. She wanted freedom, options, adventure. She could have them. I was done chasing ghosts. Inside, the house no longer felt lonely. It felt mine. By morning, nothing outside had changed. But inside, I had. The silence lingered. Jessica hadn't come home. I didn't check my phone, didn't wonder where she was, didn't ask. I already knew, and for once it didn't gut me. Instead, I pulled on an old hoodie, laced up my sneakers, and stepped into the brisk Phoenix air. Dry. Honest. A cold you could brace against. 5 minutes away sat a rundown gym, buzzing lights, rusty machines, no frills. I signed up on the spot. No discounts, no orientation. I just needed somewhere the world couldn't talk back, somewhere I could sweat out the weight in my chest. That first workout destroyed me. I hadn't touched a barbell in years. The treadmill shredded my legs, turned them to rope. But mile by mile, rep by rep, something inside shifted. The ache was honest, predictable, welcome. Pain gave me structure. I started showing up every day, same time, same hoodie, no excuses. While Jessica drifted deeper into whatever thrill she was chasing, I worked. Bled out the bitterness one push-up at a time. The soreness became my new baseline. I cleaned up my diet, ditched the whiskey, added greens, slept like it mattered, small habits stacked. Quietly, everything shifted. The house reflected it too. I boxed up her shoes from the hallway, packed away the dresses gathering dust, cleared her books from the nightstand, and replaced them with a clock and a notepad. My side of the bed was made every morning, a ritual I hadn't practiced since college. Jessica noticed. Of course she did. She didn't say a word, but I caught it in her eyes one evening. Returning home to clean counters, folded laundry, order where chaos used to reign. She froze in the hallway, heels tapping against tile, brow creased. She almost spoke, almost, but I brushed past her without slowing. The balance had shifted, she felt it. No shouting, no accusations, silence carried more weight than any words could. Later that week, I ran 5 miles without stopping. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. I didn't know what came next. Jessica never mentioned her date again. No speeches about freedom, no talk of open love. She moved through the house like a guest now, quiet, cautious, watching. But me? I was rebuilding, not for revenge, not for her, for me. For the version of myself I'd lost, the one who didn't need permission to heal. Meeting someone new wasn't part of the plan. Socializing wasn't even on the radar. I was mid-set at the gym, back day, locked into the rhythm. Clanking plates, muted grunts, static focus. Between sets, I turned too fast, towel slung over my shoulder, and collided with someone hard. She hit the rubber floor with a dull thud. "Whoa, hey!" I dropped to her side. "You okay?" She looked up at me, breath shallow, hair tied back in a messy knot. Her leggings were scuffed, but her expression was more startled than hurt. "Pretty sure I just got tackled by a linebacker," she muttered. I laughed, unexpected, genuine. "That's on me. You all right?" She tried to stand, winced, shifted her weight. Her face tightened. "Nope, that's not happening." Without thinking, I offered my arm. "Can you put weight on it?" "Not sure," she said, forcing a small smile. "I'm Claire, by the way." "Nathan." She leaned into me as we got her upright. Her knee buckled again. "Hospital?" I asked. She didn't argue. The drive to the ER was quiet, but not awkward. Claire radiated a calmness, like someone who'd seen chaos before and didn't scare easy. She cracked a few jokes between winces, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Really laughed. After x-rays and a quick brace, I was about to leave when she glanced up from the hospital bed. "Hate to ask," she said softly, "but could you give me a ride home?" She lived 10 minutes away, in a quiet complex behind a row of desert palms. I walked her to her door, careful with her limp. As I turned to leave, she asked, almost shyly, "Any chance you could drive me to physical therapy next week? I'd call a friend, but most of them flake." I should have said no, should have drawn a boundary. But something about her felt easy, easier than anything had in a long time. "I can do that," I told her. Days slid into weeks, almost without me noticing. In that time, she opened up about her work at a nonprofit, about the knee injury from years ago that still throbbed when the weather turned damp. I offered pieces of my own story in return. The quiet house I went home to, my evenings at the gym, never forcing the words, never rushing them out. She didn't pry, and I didn't feel the need to justify myself. Somehow, it felt easy. One night, sitting in her driveway after dropping her off, she looked at me, her voice low. "You always seem like someone clawing their way out of a fire." I frowned slightly. "I mean that in a good way," she added quickly. "Like you've already survived the flames, but you still carry the heat with you." I didn't respond then, but driving home afterward, something clicked. For the first time in months, the weight I'd been carrying didn't feel so crushing. Claire never demanded anything from me, and somehow without even trying, she was helping me find my footing again. It didn't all shift in a single moment. At first, Jessica's tension showed up quietly, her lingering too long in the kitchen when I walked in from the gym, standing in the hallway just as I ended a call, asking about the car even though she already knew where I was going. But her eyes gave her away, a flicker of suspicion mixed with confusion, like she could sense something had changed but couldn't name it, and hated that she wasn't in control of it. One evening, she walked into the living room while I was scrolling through playlists on the TV. Dinner was already on the stove, nothing special, just grilled chicken and rice, but I'd made enough for two, mostly out of habit. She stopped, staring at the counter. "You cook now?" she asked. I kept my eyes on the screen. "Been cooking for weeks." She folded her arms. "That's new." "No," I said evenly. "You just haven't been around." Her jaw tightened. "You've been quiet lately." I met her gaze. "And you've been loud." She flinched, barely noticeable, but it was there. The silence that followed was hers to break. She didn't. That weekend, I came home to find her at the dining table. Heels still on, half a glass of red wine at her elbow, scrolling her phone without really seeing it. The TV sat dark. She was waiting. "You've been out a lot," she said without looking up as I opened the fridge. "Yeah." "With who?" I closed the door, turned toward her. "Does it matter?" Her eyes lifted then, something raw flickering there, unguarded for the first time in a long while. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just let the silence hang between us for a beat too long. Maybe. The word hit like a hairline crack spreading through glass. She pushed back from the table so quickly the wine glass rattled, splashing red across the napkin beneath it. "Wow, just like that?" I tilted my head. "You're surprised?" "I thought we were trying to figure things out," she shot back, voice climbing sharp and brittle. "No," I said calmly. "You were trying to figure out how to have everything. I was just trying to survive it." Jessica stepped closer, shoulders squared now. "You told me you weren't looking." "I wasn't," I said with a small shrug, "but sometimes things find you." She opened her mouth like she had something cutting to say, but nothing came. And in that silence, everything shifted. I walked past her, plate in hand, and sat at the counter with my dinner like it was any other night. Because it was. Because for the first time since that party, she was the one thrown off balance. Later, I heard her moving through the house, pacing the hallway, opening and closing drawers, straightening things that didn't need fixing. Just before midnight, she stopped at the front door. I heard her hand on the knob, but she didn't leave. Maybe she wasn't sure what she'd even be walking away from anymore. And for once, I wasn't waiting on her to come back. The next morning, she made coffee before I did. Handed me a mug like it was an offering. "Big plans today?" she asked, watching me closely. I sipped. "Yeah." She waited for more, but I didn't give it. Because the truth was, I did have plans. A late lunch, a quiet walk, time with someone who saw me without expecting anything in return. And maybe that was what Jessica couldn't stand. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was okay. Downtown pulsed with energy that night, but the little bistro Claire picked felt hidden away. Exposed brick, soft string lights, a table small enough that leaning in felt natural. She was telling me about her grandfather's bizarre obsession with model trains. And I was laughing. The real kind. The kind that shakes loose from somewhere you didn't know was tight. Her voice had an easy rhythm, warm and steady. And when she listened, it felt like nothing else in the room mattered. That's when I saw her. Jessica, bursting through the entrance, her eyes locking on me before the hostess even looked up. "Seriously?" Her voice cut through the hum of conversation, sharp enough to turn heads. Claire turned toward me, confusion flashing across her face. "Nathan," she whispered. I stood, instinctively stepping between them, not to shield Claire, but because I already knew why Jessica was there. "Jessica," I said, keeping my tone level. "You couldn't even try to hide it," she hissed. "Parading your little rebound around like I never existed?" Behind me, Claire shifted her coat. "Should I go?" "No," I said gently, not looking back. "You're fine." Jessica scoffed. "Unbelievable! You're pathetic." The restaurant froze, forks hovering, conversations breaking off. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't match her chaos. "I didn't start this, Jessica," I said evenly. She blinked, thrown. "I didn't turn our marriage into a joke in front of everyone we knew," I continued. "I didn't decide loyalty was negotiable or that love came with loopholes." Her throat worked, but she didn't look away. "You pushed this," I said. "You laughed your way into freedom. So don't be shocked that I'm finally breathing." Jessica's voice cracked. "So that's it? After everything?" "Yes," I said simply, "that's it." She stood frozen in the middle of the murmuring restaurant, music and clinking glasses rising around her like wind. Claire's hand brushed my arm, grounding me. "Let's go," I said. We slipped out the back door. Jessica didn't follow. Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean, like fresh sheets pulled from the line. Claire walked beside me quietly until we reached the car. "You okay?" she asked softly. I nodded. "I am." And for the first time I realized I meant it. That night we didn't need many words. We sat on her couch with mugs of tea, her hand finding mine and staying there. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some desperate rebound. It was steady, human, and for the first time I wasn't haunted by what I'd lost. There was a strange lightness in me that night, a quiet release I hadn't felt in months. The stillness outside no longer pressed against my chest like it used to. It felt gentle, almost forgiving. Claire sat tucked against me on her worn couch, her head resting soft against my shoulder. The low hum of the old radiator filled the silence like a soft lullaby. Time blurred. Only when my voice finally broke the stillness, I should probably get going, did she lift her head slightly. She nodded but stayed close. "You good?" she asked softly. And for the first time in a long while, I could answer without hesitation. "Yeah, I am." I rose and she stood with me. No dramatic pause, no unspoken plea, just two people finding something fragile yet whole in the middle of wreckage. At the door, she kissed me, not fiery or desperate, but warm, quiet. When I stepped into my own house, the silence was heavier. The living room was dark, but I felt her presence in the air. Jessica's. She always left a light on when she couldn't sleep. Tonight, not even that. I didn't tiptoe, didn't stall. I walked straight to the kitchen, to the drawer where I'd buried the envelope beneath forgotten menus and warranty slips. The papers inside were signed, final, notarized, undeniable. I placed them on the table, and the dull sound seemed louder than it should have been. A creak in the hallway followed. Jessica appeared, arms folded across her chest like a shield. Her gaze landed on the envelope. She froze. "What's that?" she asked, though she already knew. "Divorce papers." For a long second, she just stood there. Then her hand trembled as she opened the flap, scanned the first page. "You've already signed them?" Her voice cracked between disbelief and quiet panic. "A week ago," I said. She opened her mouth, searching for words, maybe excuses, maybe something rehearsed. Nothing came. Finally, barely above a whisper, "I never actually cheated. You know that, right?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I felt no anger, no ache, just an ending. "That doesn't matter anymore." Her face tightened. "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" "It means the damage was done long before we crossed any lines. You stopped choosing me. That was enough." Jessica blinked, struggling to hold herself together. "I thought, maybe we could try again." I gave her the same look I used to give when my mind was made up, the quiet, steady one she recognized instantly. "There's nothing left to go back to." Her hands shook as she sank into a chair. "You really don't care anymore?" "I care," I said, "just not enough to stay." Her face collapsed into something raw and small. I didn't move to comfort her. That wasn't mine to do anymore. "You always fought for us," she whispered. "Always." I nodded. "And now I'm fighting for me." There was nothing left to say. I left the signed papers on the table like an obituary for what might have been. In my room, I packed a single overnight bag, steady, calm. By the time the sun rose over Phoenix, I was already gone. 2 weeks later, the world looked the same. But I didn't. Mornings felt lighter. Not perfect, but honest. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't clutching shards of something broken beyond repair. Claire and I moved slowly. No vows, no rushing to define what we were. Just two people, learning to breathe again in each other's presence. That morning, we sat in a tiny cafe on Roosevelt Row, the kind with mismatched tables and baristas in old band tees. The air smelled of espresso and cinnamon. Claire stirred her tea lazily, telling me about a coworker who'd accidentally donated 10 pounds of dried beans to a food drive. I was laughing, really laughing, when the bell above the door chimed. Jessica walked in. She didn't notice me at first. She looked tired, hair knotted, no makeup, the spark I once knew dulled. She placed an order quietly, eyes fixed on her phone. Claire noticed my sudden stillness. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I murmured, "just a ghost." Jessica turned. Our eyes met. She froze. Her lips parted like she might speak, maybe cross the room. But her gaze flicked to Claire, then to me, and faltered. Without a word, she turned and left. The bell chimed softly as the door closed behind her. Claire raised an eyebrow but didn't push. "Someone I used to know," I said, sipping my coffee. She smiled faintly, letting the silence be. And in that silence, I felt it, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying lifting at last. Closure doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the absence of pain. Sometimes it's just the way your shoulders stop tensing when a door opens. Jessica had found her freedom. I'd found mine. The rest of the morning passed in easy conversation, gentle laughter. Life went on, and so did I. That's where the story ends. Share your thoughts below. And if this one spoke to you, there are more waiting. Until next time, my friend.